And we are live. Thank you for tuning in to LLOL, Learn and Laugh Out Loud with me, Sumair Abro. I'm a business growth and leadership coach, and I'm on a mission to help you build your dream career and business. So today we have a very vibrant guest. And before even mentioning her name, there she is. Hello, Shree. How are you?
I'm doing well, Sumair, and you?
I'm doing great. No complaints. Thank you for being part of this episode. We connected quite a while ago, and I was so glad to hear that you wanted to do this. So I'm super excited.
I am pumped also, and I was super glad that you wanted me here. So thanks for having me.
Okay. So you know how the show works, right? I'm going to ask you some serious questions, but also a couple of really fun questions. So let's start with a fun question. Are you ready?
I'm a Gemini. I'm up for anything.
I love that attitude. So here it goes. What sound or noise do you find really annoying?
People chewing. Cannot handle the sound of people chewing. I think there's actually a term for it that I read long ago, but it may be a disorder I have. Cannot stand it. I can almost barely eat in restaurants. So that's the only convenient part of COVID.
Thanks for the heads up. I'll make sure that, me and you do not have dinner or any food together because, my daughter earlier was telling me, Dad, stop chewing that hard. I'm like, okay.
I have a feeling your daughter and I would get along really well, Sumair.
I think so. So now let's go to some of our serious questions. And I wanted to know this because when we spoke last time, you were moving and, I wanted you to just talk a little bit about, challenges that you faced and you overcame. And I believe you're doing really well when you moved from Miami to Boston. So can you just run us through some of the things, some of the challenges and how you are doing now?
Sure. So I arrived in Boston 5 weeks before life got canceled. So the way I've been describing it is I basically turned into Rapunzel, locked up in a tower with someone bringing me food periodically and no company other than that. What ended up happening is I did have those precious 5 weeks. So it meant that I had the opportunity to join a co-working space called The Wing, and it's a female-only co-working space. So I got to make some really good connections through that venue before the city shut down completely. What I've been able to do throughout this period, in terms of overcoming the challenge of moving to a city and not knowing anyone and trying to build a life, is I've been able to nurture what were really fledgling relationships that I had developed during those first 5 weeks in Boston. And like everybody, you connect with people through Zoom and through other digital formats, and you just learn to create, foster, and deepen connections that you might ordinarily have done over the sound of someone loudly chewing.
That would be me. Guilty as charged. Very cool. And it's one of those things. I would love to talk about networking with you further. And sometimes just one connection makes a big difference, right?
Absolutely. And on that note, I wanted to thank you for the introduction that you made to a gentleman named Tommy DiMisa in New York. He's in Long Island. I think it's pronounced Long Island. And he brought me in. You and I, Sumair, had only spoken that one time. And
right.
You thought, and it was great because you thought to make the introduction to Tommy. He has pulled me into a networking group that has become a huge part of my pandemic world. I jump on 2 or 3 of their networking calls every week. And what's great about that is back to what I had mentioned about being able to foster and nurture connections. Digital networking presents no geographic obstacle at all. So I've been able, through that networking group called the Networking Group, TNG, I've been able to make connections all across the United States. So I'm profoundly grateful to you for making that first introduction that was like a spoke in a wheel because it just had so many reverberations for me.
Wow. Thank you for such kind words. That's how networking, works. My intent was just to connect you with someone, and hey, you just
And you did.
yeah, and you just never know. So I'm glad it worked out because I hardly know that person, but I had a feeling that something can happen between you two. So I'm glad to hear what you just told me. Now I want to move to, because you are an attorney, right? So, but you do something really specific, and I wanted to find out and also let the audience know is that what is a particular problem that you solve for people and organizations?
So I am licensed in Florida, but the business that I'm engaged in is not the practice of law. I'm here in Massachusetts where I'm not licensed to practice. So the problem that I solve for people and organizations, primarily for organizations, is the really, really expensive cost of the document review that happens pursuant to litigation. So documents need to be, the process is called discovery. It's the fact-finding phase of litigation. And both sides have the right to request to discover certain information that's held by the other party. What I do is I come in with process and workflow designed specifically and tailored for the needs of a particular document review matter, with the idea being to cut costs. And litigation expenditures are very, very high. So that's an area where I like to think I'm well received, and the service that I'm providing is well received.
No, absolutely. Anytime you have to get into litigation or hire a lawyer, anything can happen. So any way that anyone can help save money, it's always great. So awesome. It's a very unique thing you do. And speaking of problems, I wanted to share a brief presentation, like 2 or 3 slides, because otherwise I get bored, and I don't want myself to be bored, and the audience not to be bored, and talk a little bit about leadership, and we will come back to I have to remember to remove this. You see, there are so many effects in this that you have to make sure you remove some of the things before you move forward. And now I need to remove this. Okay, here we go. So very briefly, now I have to hit the share button.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything so far.
Okay, and now you're behind years now. Okay, here we go. Let's see if it works now. Okay, do you see now?
I do.
Okay, very cool. So I wanted to talk about 3 leadership traits least talked about. The reason being that if you go on Google or any of the search engines, all you hear about is the top qualities of leader, the 11 most talked about qualities of leadership. So I just wanted to give it a twist and talk about some of the things that are often not discussed, but to me at least, they are really important. So what are those 3 traits? Very quickly, number 1. You see all these companies, they have something in common. And let me come to that in a second. So the first trait, which I think is really important as a leadership trait, is your ability to sacrifice. We all talk about leaders having a vision, doing this and that, but as leaders, our ability to sacrifice becomes really critical sometimes, especially nowadays when COVID has hit us at a time that everything's up for the grab. As leaders, our ability to sacrifice is really critical. And, leadership is about doing what it takes to drive a team towards a greater goal, be it a social mission or a desire to maximize the return for the company. And, leaders put these goals above all else and are the first to sacrifice when times get tough. Now, what these companies have in common is, according to Business Insider, leaders from these iconic companies most affected by the pandemic forfeited their paychecks as the situation worsened. Now, that's something really big. And I know a lot of people say, hey, you know what? This was only their base salary. It doesn't matter. Anything that you can sacrifice as a leader is good stuff to me. The second trait I wanted to talk about was humility. Yes, leadership is about a lot of confidence. A lot of times it's considered a good leader needs to be charismatic, but it also has to be with a lot of humility. If anyone remembers this book, Good to Great by Jim Collins, which came out 20 years ago, it was all about leadership traits, which a lot of people do not talk about. And according to Jim Collins, the two common traits of CEOs in companies that transition from average to superior performance are humility and a strong will to advance the cause of the organization. Not their own cause, but the cause of the organization. Also, as per Forbes, a survey of 105 computer software and hardware firms revealed that humility in CEOs led to higher performing leadership teams, increase the collaboration and cooperation and flexibility in developing strategies. So that's the second trait. Now, the last one is patience, right? So in these fast times, we always talk about moving fast, not being perfect, moving fast, that's fine. But patience is a virtue which is critical. And I couldn't think of a better person when it came to patience than good old Abe. And he has a famous quote, "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree and I will spend the first 4 sharpening the axe." So it's all about preparation. It's all about patience. And lastly, I'm pretty sure you've heard the expression, good things come to those who wait. So I've just, edited a little bit and given it my own twist. I say all good things come to those who act and practice patience. So those are the 3 traits of leadership stuff, which is not talked about a lot. And with this, I will stop sharing and go back to our featured guest, Shree. Hey there, you're still here.
I'm still here. I didn't log off, and it actually raised some questions for me, which is how do you work with your coaching clients to inculcate those traits and to really nurture and develop those that might be nascent?
It's what's really interesting is a lot of the coaching clients that you work with already have these traits. You might find it surprising because a lot of people who go for help or they want to be coached, they have accepted the fact that they cannot do all of this alone. So I've been blessed that way that a lot of clients that I come across already have these qualities. I just have to build on them and help them, move forward in life, if that makes sense. Hey, Shree, you're so cool. You asked me a question. I'm on to you.
I thought I'd, switch it up a little bit.
No, very cool, very cool. So now it's my turn to ask you a question. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. And, this is something which I have thought of, and I think I'll ask you this question is because, always people ask about the important qualities of leadership. What do you think is the least important leadership trait for you?
Of those 3?
Of those 3, of anything else, any leadership trait you think that, a leader can do without? You don't have to have that to be a leader.
I will very humbly disagree with you on the patience, in fact.
Okay.
I think I would characterize patience as an attribute that can be incorporated into leadership and can be valuable. I also think there's room, Sumair, for divergent leadership styles. And I believe it's also tremendously useful to know as a leader, what is my default style? What are the areas in which I can absolutely develop? But you play to your strengths as a leader. And so my belief is that patience can be a trait, but it's not a trait that maybe this is because I don't have much of it. But I also think, so look at the flip side of it.
Yeah.
A leader who's maybe, I don't want to say impatient, but a leader who lacks patience could also be seen as hard charging in a good way and visionary and driving projects forward, driving his or her vision forward in a really assertive, bold, and fiery way. And if the team lines up with that vision, I think there's room for that.
Awesome. Hey, This is what we want more of in this country: two people being civilized and disagreeing and having a conversation, right?
Amen to that. Amen to that. We could use
No, I
more
totally,
civility in 2020.
I totally understand your point. One of the things that in my opinion, at least, is as a leader, sometimes we get into the trap of wanting to be liked by everyone. That is something which I think a trait which you do not have. I'm not saying that you have to be really mean to people, but if you focus too much on being liked by everyone, a lot of times the job doesn't get done. So that's one of the things that I think of, if that makes sense.
One of the things that was said to me by my father, who led large businesses for all of his career, was, if as a leader everybody likes you, you're probably not doing your job.
Probably not doing your job. Makes perfect sense. Okay, so we have a little time left, and I want to get into some of the silly questions. Look at the smile on your face. You're like, okay, here it comes. He's going to ask you something really stupid.
The silly questions, those are what I'm here for, Sumair.
Okay, so here we go. Which song would you or do you sing in the shower?
Well, much to the dismay of my neighbors, it's usually Sarah McLachlan, Mary. And if you've never heard it, I suggest putting it on and then imagining the horror to which I subject all of my neighbors every day.
Can you sing it for us a little bit? Just maybe one line?
Absolutely not. Not a chance. Nope.
Oh man. I almost thought I will make you do it, but hey, I forgot that I'm talking to an attorney, right?
If this were an evening broadcast over cocktails, then maybe.
Then maybe, okay. All right, so time for one last question, and this is something I ask everyone, right? If heaven exists and when you arrive at the pearly gates, what do you want God to say to you?
You can take off your mask because we don't have COVID here.
That made me laugh. Hey, one of the things that I like about this, that I for some reason I laugh at a lot of stuff. So thank you for making me laugh. Any parting words? Anything you want to say to the audience? By the way, before you say that, I love the fact that when you made this post about being on this show on LinkedIn, there were so many people, your friends, who liked and commented. I got so jealous. I'm confessing, really. I was like, how come people don't like my posts?
Disagree. I think it's that I'm an infrequent poster. But to the extent there was any traffic there, Sumair, I will tell you, a lot of it was from TNG folks, people I met through that wonderful networking group. And they really come out as a community we really come out as a community to support each other. And so if I had any parting words, it would be to really find yourself a community. Now more than any other time, we need to feel that we have a sense of belonging. And wherever we find that, I think take it and hold on to it tight.
That's a beautiful message. I love it. So before we go, and I want you to stick around for a little while after we're done with this, let me just quickly make a quick announcement about next week. So next week we will have Carolyn Cooper McCout. I have to ask her how she pronounces her last name. It's really difficult for me. So tune in for that. In the meantime, thank you so much, Shree, for giving us your time. It was wonderful speaking to you, and you made me laugh, and I learned also. So that's awesome.
Thank you for having me. It's really been a pleasure.
All right. Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.